Zach from Gravel Bike, California, here to light the lamp as we're getting ready for Send It, Sacramento. When we were kids, we opened up our textbooks and thought of this place as the Gold Rush and Sutter's Fort. Yet in modern terms, it's the capital to the world's 5th largest economy. Yet it also retains a small town feel. Now, I've had many run-ins with Sacramento, and I'll tell you in person my ties to gym boys. But in terms of riding gravel, not so much. Last September when I was rolling through town, I had to try out the Bike Dog Brewery Thursday night ride, and I was like, man, so much playfulness just right along the waterways. I've got to come back. So, let's get lit. Let's roll. Combining 3 of my favorite things into one name, I've long kept an eye on joining Bike Dog Brewing for one of their rides, and heading up for the Lassen Gravel Adventure ride last September gave me the opportunity to join their seasonal Thursday evening ride, led by Kevin and Ashley out of Old Saxon Velo Veritas, who here are victims of my limited stock footage collection. And even without me taking a lot of reel on this ride, it's not only clear there was a lot of great riding to enjoy, but the biggest takeaway was it felt like a bunch of people out for having fun that just happened to be doing it on a bike. So knowing I was headed to the Sacramento Valley area for Huffmaster in February, I was led back to In Velo Veritas to pick Kevin's brain on putting a ride together, connecting me with Bike Dog owner Sage, who graciously did a lot of the legwork to help put this Send It together. So I was happy to leave the route planning to the locals, as this 31-mile loop may not look dynamic in the Z-axis, but more than made up for it in the other 2. It was figuratively and literally a standing room only crowd, as Northern California cornerstone Frank gave out instructions, witnessing GBC's first moment where we could have used a megaphone, with a smooth rollout from Bike Dog's West Sac location onto the back streets of this industrial area, where even on these flat surfaces, getting a head count was as futile as being a cellist in a marching band, as our first sector of dirt came as a surprise, rolling along a collection of freight, falling in line just like the cars next to us, not leaving a lot of room to dodge around, but at these speeds, it was like, yee-haw! And I'm not saying if I used the railing to pull around the puddle, just waiting after to see who would emerge, looking like we had grabbed some latecomers, as it was clear coming around the corner that this was the biggest Send It to date, with this large group innocuously making this water crossing right before leaning into a turn that would define the next few miles, as we'd be paralleling the Sacramento Deepwater Channel, first starting off on pavement, then going under the last crossing of this channel until it meets up with the Sacramento River 30 miles down, as it's funny riding against the scale, against these large objects on the other side, while some of the views on the left were far familiar, only needing to pay some attention to what was ahead, as at 5 miles in, the fun had just begun. I was familiar with this section from my last visit, knowing I could get a lot of footage of this smooth surface. But while you could just go around the gate, I knew there were greater rewards below, with informality paying off, as I have no idea how these trails got here. And without markings of these diversions from above, you want to be sure to roam around. Glad that there are layers to be found, and even this little climb gets your blood pumping, that you keep looking for extra credit, no matter how short, with this group getting ready for some exploration station. Coming back to the top of the levee started a new chapter as we flip over down the other side with our group elegantly spread out like an army of ants, not quite expecting challenges over the next 3/4 of the mile, as there was no problem with the variance of gravity, but wiggling around the inconsistent pockets of mud that didn't always produce the best results. So I just decided to ride straight through it, and maybe my encouragement didn't bat 1,000 with everyone returning without a speck of dirt. Mostly. We exited out onto Highway 84, where you had to keep a little lookout for traffic, but our time was thankfully short-lived. Transitioning onto some farmland fare, exiting to an interesting inner-city landmark, passing under the former bridge of the Oakland, Antioch, and Eastern Railway, connecting to Sacramento, even with the use of a ferry, with this relic standing firm, over a century old, ready to ride now along another distinguishing feature. With a few gates to dismount around for the next 6 miles, we now found ourselves rolling by the Sacramento River, providing an interesting dichotomy with a rural spacing of homes to our left that could not see the water for their own protection, and while the surface allowed for speeds at ease, you have to make sure you appreciate this moment of riding so close to the center of a major city, yet being so quiet other than turning gears. And before one of our last gate maneuvers, Frank gave an option for some single track shenanigans, as he should know, as Sacramento has a cooking cyclocross scene, with the final rodeo cross of the season a huge highlight. So I had little choice but to cave to peer pressure, garnering a lot of possibilities out here, with trails in every direction, as well as some of our own, as you didn't need much gravity to gain momentum, just needing these 2-story undulations to get going, feeling like it was kids' play out there. But I couldn't go full force, as my legs were super stiff from the day before. I was recording. No emergency services were needed, as I would be happy with a second go around for redemption someday. Now back to moving on mode on pavement, using some pretty clean infrastructure to get us back by the river, with some friendly developments adjoining. As I'll note, this entire ride took place in Yolo County, being on this side of the river, dipping below instead of crossing over the Tower Bridge that's been in place for 90 years, with the water level just low enough to pass under, though not amenable to continue straight. But this was the determined group to locate gravel, not afraid to weave up and down to find it, making our way under the 1912 I Street Bridge that's slated for replacement in the near future, as the margins for staying dry seem thin, rolling now through Yolo County Park, while still riding below the banks of the levee, wondering how much of this area has spent its time submerged, as we soon did the opposite, coming back up the levee, soon fulfilling a requirement of any gravel ride, rerouting semi-elegantly on the fly around more flooding, escaping through this neighborhood by I don't know how, finding our way back to the shore via pavement, with I-80 looming above with few connections to its surroundings. Along this quiet parallel that you still had to be aware of speeding drivers turning over to find more access points as the scale of water management continued to impress. We took the less obvious option down below, riding underneath protection for the Sacramento Bypass Wildlife Area, as the top was a viable option too, but there was a bit more dodging below, with the opportunity to show off your climbing acumen, although it ended up being a how to push your bike showcase. As we paused to head south along another weir, made me think of a different angle on the roll of water where we ride, as it normally defines where towns get built, or roads paralleling their flat features. But in this case, there's just so much land mitigating flooding. It amazes me how far you can bike, but feel like you're making little progress. After a stand by me moment crossing the rails, that unfortunately didn't yield any video of people trying to bike over it, we had a couple of miles of levee locomotion left, with another water surplus situation causing an on-street detour, lining up for the last time. As you could say, we were nearing the end of the ride, or getting closer to returning to Bike Dog. So as someone mentioned, I didn't release a crash video last year. Why not try to create more content by bucking the trend? But apologies in advance for failing on that front, as it seemed equally quiet coming back through the industrial, feeling triumphant on our return, with Bike Dog Brewing already bubbling, that well extended outside, taking up every available space. So hats off to Sage for being such a phenomenal host, and Frank, who's a far more capable Sherpa than me. This ride exemplified what an incredible community we have. So the cool part about this outro is I have to tell you how fun today was. I mean, you can just see it on people's faces. I mean, we had so much fun going around, and Frank did such an excellent job shepherding us through here. Really though, the big takeaway and why I'm a big part of this is the community. I mean, so many great people out here, and I mean, that's why we do these rides, is to just be with each other and have these experiences. So thanks so much to Sage and Frank and everyone that made it out, and we'll be out here again. If you want to support us, hit the subscribe button or go on to Patreon or go to our shop so we can bring you more. Stay dirt.